Meow, I'm Huples cat. I've read this book and I'm going to review it for you. Spoiler alert, though I will try and keep some of it hidden in case you want to read the book. My partner Kitty, she got this book a while ago and she read it and enjoyed it and said that I would enjoy reading it. And Netflix released a film of it and there was a lot of buzz around the film. I read the book without watching the film. I have unfortunately seen some clips from the film and the trailer, and it looks substantially different and probably worse than the book. But once I finish editing this video and uploaded it, I'm actually going to watch the film and then I'll do another review with spoilers comparing the differences between the film and the text. Right at the beginning, I'm going to say this book's worth reading. It's quite an easy read, it's an interesting read, and I think it's important for everybody to read it, especially for preppers. It gives an insight into disasters that most prepping channels tend to ignore.
Hi readers, my name is Rahman Alam. I'm the author of 3 novels, Rich and Pretty, That Kind of Mother, and my new book, Leave the World Behind. Leave the World Behind is a story about a white, upper-middle-class Brooklyn family who head out on vacation to a quiet corner of Long Island. Amanda is the mother, Clay is the father, and they have 2 teenage kids, Archie and Rose, and they're excited to just hang out at the beach, laze around by the pool, and have a beautiful end-of-summer holiday. On their second night in the house, there's a knock at the door, and they find an older black couple standing there. And this couple says that it's their house, and that they've come there because of an emergency happening in Manhattan. From then, the book shifts from being a book about a family on vacation to being a book about 6 strangers brought together under strange and maybe unknowable circumstances. It's a book about paternal love, it's a book about family, it's a book about fate, and it's a book about the state of the world we live in right now.
Amanda and Clay are enjoying a taste of the good life when Ruth and GH, an older couple who claim to own the remote holiday home they're staying in, arrive seeking shelter. These strangers say that a power outage has swept the city, but with no phone service and the internet down, the facts are unknowable. What has happened back in New York? Is the holiday home truly a safe place for their families? And are they safe from one another? Now, I don't know about you, but that kind of a scenario I've encountered before, but this book does it extremely differently, as we shall see. So it sets itself up as a thriller, and indeed it is a thriller, and there's a degree of malevolence throughout the entire book, of fear of something impending that's going to be catastrophic throughout the entire book. But what it never does is use the lazy tropes of person-on-person violence. Person-on-person violence doesn't happen. For Amanda and Clay and their 2 children, Rose and Archie, and for GH and Ruth, his wife, nothing happens ever in the book that tells them what the disaster was. And that's critical in the book. And no, in the last paragraph, they don't suddenly find out. However, we're reading the book. Throughout the book, the unnamed narrator, i.e. the author, tells us little things that tells us, the reader, if we're smart, what actually has happened and what is actually going on. For me, these reveals are a major strength of this book. The very first paragraph of the book shows us normality, but makes us feel uncertain. Well, the sun was shining. They felt that boded well. People turn any old thing into an omen. It was all just to say no clouds were to be seen. The sun where the sun always was. The sun persistent and indifferent. Amanda and Clay and their 2 children drive not very far out of New York to get to an Airbnb, an expensive one that they're treating themselves to because Amanda has just got a promotion in her workplace. $340 American a night. Where is this wilderness they're going to? Long Island. Juxtaposing the normal with the abnormal is what this book is doing. It's not set in the wilderness, it's not set in Alaska, it's set in Long Island, in a very expensive Airbnb. The GPS had no idea where they were, and they had to follow the directions that Amanda, a deft planner, had thought to copy into a notebook. Left, then right, then left, then left, then another mile or so, then left again, then 2 more miles, then right. Not quite lost, but not quite lost. You may have difficulty registering what the author's actually written there. It's actually wonderful. It takes the normal and it's making it abnormal without using tired tropes. So from a prepping point of view, don't rely on your car's GPS, definitely don't rely on your phone's GPS, write directions down. Amanda wants the holiday because she wants to have a last chance to experience her 2 children as children because both of them are on the verge of adulthood. This is particularly wonderful and it's definitely a lesson we should all take on board. An old saw, but on your deathbed, would you remember the night you took the clients to the old steakhouse on 36th Street and asked after their wives? Or bobbing about in the pool with your kids, dark lashes beaded with chlorinated water? On pages 11 and 12, there's a very detailed and long description of Amanda's shopping at the grocery store which is near to the Airbnb. It's a loving list of things that she's just casually buying with her money because she's on vacation. None of these things are going to be available to her when a disaster happens. We as readers suspect there's going to be a disaster. Amanda has no idea. She bought dried spaghetti and salted butter and a head of garlic. She bought thick cut bacon and £2 bag of flour and $12 maple syrup in a facile glass bottle like tacky perfume. She bought a pound of coffee. It goes on. As readers, we're going to think back to this later on in the book. We're going to think back to the time of pure abundance, easy abundance, stuff from around the world that's actually reasonably priced for most middle-income people. Throughout the book, cell phone and internet addiction is mentioned. She sat, the engine idling, to see if she had cell phone service, and the endorphin rush of arriving emails was almost as sexual as the flutter over the bag boy. As we get into the book, signs of a disaster are starting to appear. The GPS churned, unable to locate itself, or them, or the rest of the world. Without much thinking about it, Clay found the road to the highway and the satellite recovered its hold on them, and they drove under its protective gaze. Now in our car we do have GPS, and in our car we sometimes plug it in, but almost always we have a paper route written down or printed out. It's absolutely important that you don't just use GPS or a cell phone or the internet without thinking day after day, because when it's not there, that's not the time to adapt to it not being there. There's a Starbucks. The shop was the same as all locations of a chain tend to be. But wasn't that comforting? She played a podcast on the computer, something to do with her mind. She barely paid attention to it. Amanda did the New York Times crossword on her phone. She was afraid of dementia and felt this was preventative, and the time passed strangely, as it did when measured in minutes before the television. I hope you're picking up the sense of unease throughout this book. Time passes strangely. Of note, dementia is not at all prevented by doing crossword puzzles. Crossword puzzles are kind of fun. Clay changed the channels, pausing a moment on Rachel Maddow, and then switching to a thriller that neither of them were able to follow, detectives and their prey. Television is idiotic, Clay turned it off. He'd rather play with his phone. In a world of abundance, in a world of electronic media, we can get sucked into it, and in fact we should get sucked into it because it has some powerful goods for us. But if it becomes our motivation for how we navigate through our life, what happens when it ends? At the end of chapter 6, we suddenly get the external world intruding itself upon the paradise of the Airbnb. There was a knock at the door of this house, where no one knew they were, not even the global positioning system. This house near the ocean, but also lost in farmland. This house of red bricks painted white, the very material the smartest little piggy chose because it would keep him safest. There was a knock at the door. What were they supposed to do? Amanda stood frozen, a prey's instinct. Gather your thoughts. Get a bat, the old solution. Violence. A bat? Clay pictured the flying mammal. A bat? He understood then, but where would he get a bat? When had he last held a bat? Did he even have a baseball bat at home, and if they did, had they brought it on vacation? No, but when had they decided to forsake that American diversion? In their foyer on Baltic Street, they had a clutch of umbrellas of varying degrees of broken, an extra windshield scraper, Archie's lacrosse stick, some of those circulars, never asked for, a sheath of coupons in rainproof plastic that would never biodegrade. Well, lacrosse was from the Indians, maybe that was more all-American. On a console table, beneath a framed photograph of Coney Island, there was a brass object, an artful little talk, the kind of made-in-China geejaw meant to add character to hotel rooms or model apartments. He picked it up, but found it weighed nothing. Besides, what would he do? Wrap his fingers around it? Strike some stranger in the head? He was a professor. This was ridiculous. I don't know. Clay put the little objet d'art back in its place. Art could not protect them. So they do open the door, and there's GH and Ruth. GH is a man, he's black, and he's in his 60s. He's kind of attractive, but he's a bit small. Ruth is an older lady of indeterminate age, and she's also black. She's wearing boxy clothing. The narrator lets us know throughout this that GH and Ruth are actually smart, are actually calculating, and are actually thinking about how they're going to get access to the house. The woman shivered. Her linen clothes could not keep her warm. She seemed pitiable, elderly, ill-prepared. She was smart, and she'd been counting on this. Wow, menace. Of note, try not to wear linen or cotton clothing. It's really not a good idea, especially when it rains or it's cold. The plot then establishes that there's something very wrong. We'd have called, you see, but the phones. As I said, I would have called, but there was no service. Now Amanda decides to check up on her children, a mother's instinct. I'm not quite sure why she does this at this juncture, but it's kind of a normal response. And that's what the book does. It's taking normal people, putting them in a strange, unclear environment, and watching them flail. As they flail, our uncertainty increases. Down the dark hall, Amanda used a cell phone as a light. Again, the importance of the cell phone, again, the importance of the internet. Amanda pressed the home button and it lit up, showing her a news alert, the barely legible T of the New York Times, and only a few words. Major blackout reported on the east coast of the United States. She jabbed at it, but the application didn't open. Just the white screen of the thinking machine. GH and Ruth then explained where they were and how they ended up back at their holiday home. They'd been at a concert, they were driving back home, and then something happened. Of course, Amanda knows, she says, a blackout, and they're all impressed with how she knew. I got a news alert. Amanda took a phone from her pocket and put it on the counter. What did it say? Ruth wanted more information. She'd seen it with her own eyes, but knew nothing. Did it say why? Just that. There was a blackout on the East Coast. She looked at the phone again, but the alert was gone and she didn't know how to return to it. It's windy outside. Clay felt the cause and effect were clear. Don't underestimate a person's ability to rationalise away disaster and disaster response. Clay is normal. What he's doing is normal. He can't deal with it, so he puts it in a box marked, this is normal, I'm okay. We do this all the time. It's one of the main reasons people prep. They want a sense of control from an uncontrolled world. The uncontrolled world frightens them. They don't have money, they don't have power. A lot of them don't even have good looks, judging by a lot of prepper channels. So they make believe that they can survive a disaster and live forever and then be powerful after the event. This, of course, is denial, and it's not going to be that way for any of us. What we can do is do emergency preparedness training and get some stuff that's smart and sensible that we can use to make our lives a little bit safer and the people around us a little bit safer in the event of a major disaster. But most people are just going to explain it away by magical thinking. Human-caused climate change is seriously causing problems all across the globe this year. We're all aware of it. Magical thinking, blame it on HARP, blame it on chemtrails, blame it on the World Economic Forum, pretend it doesn't even exist, pretend it's normal. All of these coping mechanisms are really bad for you in a disaster. You have to understand what the nature of the disaster is and you have to act accordingly. When there's a disaster in this book, they don't know what the disaster is, but they know there's been a blackout. That should trigger them into action, that should trigger them into preparedness. It doesn't, they're normal people. The world tries to tell them what's going on. Immediately thereafter the lights flickered, not once, not twice, 4 times, like a message in Morse they had to decipher, like a succession of flashbulbs, but it held steady, it held course. The light held the night at bay. The 4 of them breathed in sharply, all 4 of them exhaled. This has been a 2024 Wolfie Terry's Had a Treat production.
Thank you.